In a quaint little town in Vermont, there lived a man named Samuel. Samuel was an ordinary man, with an ordinary life, but he had a secret. A secret that haunted him day and night. It all started when Samuel inherited an old portrait from his late grandmother. The portrait was of a mysterious woman, with sultry eyes and a hauntingly beautiful smile. Samuel didn't know this woman in the picture, but his grandmother gifted him with specific instructions. He also couldn't help but feel drawn to the portrait, as if it held some kind of power over him. He decided to hang it in his study, thinking it would make a nice addition to his collection of oddities. From the moment the portrait was hung on the wall, strange things began to happen. On the second day after receiving the portrait, Samuel woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, with the feeling of being watched. He got out of bed and walked around his house to see if there was an intruder, but didn't find anyone. The following night the same thing happened again, but added to that, he would hear whispers in the darkness, faint voices calling out his name. At first, Samuel dismissed it as his imagination playing tricks on him. But the next few days it seemed to be escalating. He would see the woman in the portrait move. After a couple of weeks had passed, he couldn't ignore the truth any longer. The portrait was haunted, and it was haunting him. Samuel would see the woman walking around the office, and calling to him, telling him to take her hand. She then was spotted in his kitchen and living room. She was slowly moving around from room to room, and everything she touched broke. He saw his home computer in the study broken and the floor lamps in the hallway right outside. When she got to the kitchen, the microwave and the TV in the den broke as well. The only reprieve was during the late mornings and early afternoons, it seems. He recalled the list of instructions that came with the portrait. Quickly, Samuel began to search for it. The next afternoon, he located the brown envelope that was passed over from the estate lawyer. He opened it and took the paper out. It smelled old and dusty. The paper was a shade of beige. On it was a list typed obviously by a typewriter. It began with clear instruction. 1. Follow these instructions at all times. 2. Don't cover the frame, she must see. 3. Always hang in a room without any electronics. 4. Never look into her eyes for more than a minute. And after that, a short note reads, if any of these rules were broken, and she comes to visit, you need to do the following. 5. Remove any electronic devices away from the portrait. 6. Don't look her in the eye. 7. Lock portrait away in a dark room by itself. And 8. Do not allow her to touch you. Reading over these instructions, he must admit made him feel a bit scared. But what can the ghost really do? Sure, she broke a few things, but they could be fixed or replaced, he thought. He decided that he wasn't going to follow these random instructions. Besides, his grandma was a bit on the loopy side before she had passed. Samuel became obsessed with finding out the truth behind the portrait. He spent countless hours researching its origins, searching for any information that could explain its strange powers. Any time not spent at work, or taking care of personal needs, was spent investigating. He went back to the lawyer. She knew nothing, other than it was a bit weird when the grandma informed her about the transfer of the portrait, stating it should be placed in the box with the note, and not to be handled by anyone at night. He went to family members. No one knew who was in the portrait, and some didn't even know it existed. His cousin, Mark, told him that their grandma had told him it was special, but dangerous. He went to the local library to review the archives and learnt of the first owner, Mr. Clark. There was a news story about him. A local man rides new tram, the headline read. Beside the story in the low-quality image was Mr. Clark holding the portrait. He was obsessed with it as the portrait, it seems, and it was suspected to be of his wife, but legend has it that his wife was missing or had died. The more he dug, the more he realized that the portrait was not just a simple painting. It was a portal to another world. One night, as Samuel sat in his study, staring at the portrait, he made a decision. He would enter the world within the painting and confront the woman who haunted him. He gathered his courage, took a deep breath, and touched the frame. A bright light illuminated the entire canvas, and he was pulled through the frame. What Samuel found on the other side was beyond anything he could have imagined. He was transported to a realm of darkness and shadows, where it appears the rules of reality did not apply. Looking back the way he came, it was a great distance away. Samuel started to scan around him. He heard more whispers and saw shadows. He felt like hands were touching him and tugging at this shirt and pants. He decided to try to make it back through the portal. That's when the woman from the portrait came and stood before him, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. She introduced herself as Isabella, a spirit trapped between worlds. She explained that she had been cursed centuries ago, her soul bound to the portrait until someone could set her free. Samuel was the chosen one, she said. He was the one who could break the curse and release her from her eternal torment. But freeing Isabella would come at a price. Samuel would have to sacrifice himself, his own soul, to break the curse. It was a difficult decision. Samuel knew that he couldn't live with the haunting any longer, but also, he didn't want to give up his life for her. He said he couldn't agree to the terms, but knowing he was obsessed with the portrait, she lured him in. He was dazed under her grasp, and now he was willing to do whatever it took to please her. As Samuel and Isabella performed the ritual to break the curse, a blinding light enveloped them both. Samuel felt a surge of energy pass through him, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. When the light faded, he found himself back in his study, but this time, he was now in the portrait looking out. Samuel was missing, and all that was found of him was the portrait. His family learnt of his disappearance and has been searching for him to this day. His portrait was last seen at an estate sale at his mother's residence after she had passed.